They thought they had me trapped. At dinner. In public. With witnesses. Sign it, he said. Or we take everything from you. They didn't wait for an answer. They slid the papers closer. Numbers already filled in. Deadlines already set. Like it was finished. Like I had already lost. One of them leaned in. We've been preparing this for a long time. I looked at the folder. Didn't open it. Didn't touch it. That's when they got confident. Small smiles. Relaxed shoulders. They thought silence meant fear. It didn't. It meant I was counting. 3 people. 1 plan. And 1 mistake. They believed I walked into this blind. They believed I had no way out. I leaned back in my chair. Interesting, I said quietly. They mistook that for surrender. So they pushed harder. You built something valuable, he said. It would be a shame to lose it over an old problem. Old problem. That word told me everything. This wasn't business. This was personal. Carefully planned. Carefully timed. I looked at each of them. Memorized their faces. Because I knew this moment would matter. Then I said the only thing that changed the room. You should have checked who you were threatening. They didn't react. Not yet. So I gave them the truth. I bought your company last week. Silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't move. My name is Daniel Carter. And I never sit down at a table. Unless I already control the outcome. The first sign came a week before that dinner. Not obvious. Not loud. Just, wrong. It started with a call. One of their people reached out. Said they wanted to explore a private opportunity. The wording was careful. Too careful. Serious investors don't talk like that. They get to the point. I asked for details. They avoided them. Instead, they asked about me. Not my portfolio. Not my current deals. Me. How long have you been in the industry? Do you still hold controlling interests? Are you actively managing your companies? That's when I paused. Those weren't investor questions. Those were positioning questions. I gave them nothing. Short answers. Vague. They didn't push. That was the second sign. Because people with real money always push. Always. 2 days later, I got an email. No branding. No signature beyond a name I didn't recognize. Inside, a proposal. Generic. Clean. Too clean. Numbers that looked impressive. But no structure behind them. No real risk breakdown. No timeline that made sense. It wasn't built to work. It was built to look convincing. I read it twice. Then I noticed something else. A reference. Buried in the middle. 1 sentence. Given your prior involvement in the Marsh case. I stopped there. Read it again. Slowly. The Marsh case. That wasn't public. Not fully. Not in a way random investors would casually reference. I leaned back in my chair. That wasn't curiosity anymore. That was direction. Someone had done research. Specific research. And they wanted me to know it. Not openly. But just enough. A signal. We know something. I didn't reply right away. I let it sit. Watched what they would do next. They didn't follow up. No reminders. No pressure. Just silence. Controlled silence. Like they were waiting for me to walk into something. That's when the feeling changed. From strange. To intentional. 3 days before the dinner, my daughter mentioned them. Casually. Too casually. "Oh, you should meet them," she said. "They're serious people." I didn't ask how she knew them. Not yet. Instead, I asked one question. "Who introduced you?" She hesitated. Just for a second. "Through a partner," she said. "Which partner?" She didn't say. And I didn't push. Because by then, I already knew. This wasn't an opportunity. It was a setup. Carefully built. Patiently timed. And aimed directly at me. What I didn't know yet was how far they were willing to go. The next sign wasn't one thing. It was a pattern. Small pieces. Individually harmless. Together, deliberate. It started with a meeting request. One of my mid-level managers flagged it. Said someone had been asking about internal structure. Not unusual. Except they weren't asking about performance. They were asking about control. Who signs final approvals? Who has override authority? Who can freeze transactions? That's not curiosity. That's mapping. I told him to decline. Politely. He did. They didn't push. Again. That was becoming a pattern. They never pushed. They positioned. 2 days later, I noticed something else. A vendor I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. Friendly tone. Too friendly. He mentioned an old project. From decades ago. Then casually asked if I was still connected to that situation. I asked which situation. He didn't answer directly. Just said, "You know the one." I did. And now I knew they were reaching sideways. Not directly at me. Around me. Testing what people knew. Testing what people would say. I ended the call quickly. Made a note. Then I checked something I hadn't checked in years. Old records. Names. Connections. It didn't take long. The same name appeared twice. Different contexts. Same direction. Marsh. That wasn't coincidence anymore. That was intention. The next detail came from inside. My assistant walked in one morning. Slightly confused. "Someone dropped this off for you," she said. No courier. No signature. Just a sealed envelope. I didn't open it right away. I looked at it. Weight was wrong. Too light for documents. Too heavy for nothing. I opened it. Inside, a single page. No letterhead. No greeting. Just a list. Dates. Transactions. Fragments of information. Incomplete. But recognizable. Someone had taken pieces of the past. And arranged them carefully. Not enough to prove anything. But enough to suggest something. Enough to create pressure. At the bottom, one line. Typed. Old things don't stay buried forever. No name. No threat. Just a statement. I didn't react. I folded the paper. Put it back. Then I did something I rarely do. I called my legal team. Not with details. Just one instruction. Pull everything related to Marsh. Originals only. No summaries. No interpretations. I wanted facts. Because by then, the pattern was clear. They weren't attacking. Not yet. They were building a frame. Piece by piece. Context by context. So that when they finally made their move, it would look complete. Convincing. I stood by the window in my office. Looked out at the city. Everything normal. Traffic moving. People walking. No sign of what was coming. That's the thing about controlled operations. You don't feel the impact until it's already in motion. And by then, you're usually too late. But I wasn't. Because now I could see it. The calls. The questions. The envelope. The silence. All connected. All leading somewhere. To one moment. One confrontation. I didn't know the exact shape yet. But I knew the setting. A controlled environment. Neutral ground. Where they believed they had the advantage. That's when the dinner invitation made sense. Not as an opportunity. Not as a courtesy. But as the final step. They weren't gathering information anymore. They were ready to use it. And they expected me to walk in. Unprepared. They were wrong. But I needed to be sure. So I made one call of my own. Quiet. Direct. And after that call, the pattern didn't just make sense. It confirmed something worse. This wasn't just about the past. This was personal. And it had been building for a long time. The confirmation didn't come from them. It came from someone who didn't know he was giving it. A compliance officer. External. Careful. Used to saying nothing. I asked one question. Has anyone been requesting archived financial data connected to me? Pause. Too long. Yes, he said finally. How many? Multiple requests. Different channels. That was enough. They weren't guessing. They were digging. I asked for timestamps. They lined up perfectly. With the calls. With the email. With the envelope. Same window. Same direction. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Under what authority? Another pause. Then. Legal inquiry. Not official. Not filed. But prepared. That's when it stopped being suspicion. And became strategy. I thanked him. Hung up. Then I called someone else. Older. Retired. One of the few people who had seen everything from the beginning. He didn't ask why I was calling. He already knew. Marsh, he said. Yes. Silence. Then a quiet breath. You should have expected this. Explain. There was a brother. I didn't speak. 15 years younger, he continued. Didn't know the full story. Only Victor's version. I closed my eyes for a second. Of course. Not random. Not investors. Family. And now? I asked. He's been asking questions. For years. Years. This wasn't recent. This wasn't opportunistic. This was patient. Deliberate. And the people around him? I asked. Connected. Not powerful on their own. I understood immediately. He didn't build something. He attached himself to something. To someone. I ended the call. Sat there for a moment. Everything aligned. The references. The pressure. The timing. This wasn't about money. Money was just the tool. This was about rewriting the past. Using me as the final piece. Then one more detail surfaced. The name from the email. The one without a signature. I ran it properly this time. Not surface level. Deep. Corporate links. Shell connections. Indirect ownership. It took less than an hour. The name led to a holding group. The holding group led to a private entity. And that entity was tied directly to the people who invited me to dinner. Same circle. Different layers. But the same structure. That's when I saw it clearly. They weren't just preparing a case. They were preparing a narrative. Documents. Fragments. Old records. Not enough to win in court. But enough to destroy reputation. Enough to create doubt. And doubt is cheaper than proof. I stood up. Walked to my desk. Opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside were originals. Not copies. Not summaries. Everything. Untouched. Unedited. The full version of what actually happened. I didn't need to read it again. I remembered every page. Every signature. Every decision. What I needed was something else. Leverage. Because now the stakes were clear. This wasn't a conversation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an attempt. Calculated. Personal. And designed to end one way. With me signing something I didn't agree to. Or losing everything I built. I closed the drawer. Picked up my phone. And made the decision. I wouldn't avoid the dinner. I wouldn't delay it. I would walk in. Exactly as they expected. But not for their reason. For mine. Because if they wanted a stage, I was going to choose the ending. And for the first time since this started, I knew exactly who I was sitting across from. Not investors. Not partners. Not strangers. Family. The kind that waits. The kind that smiles. And the kind that believes a story long enough to make it dangerous. No turning back. I didn't expect it to be her. That was my mistake. Not the dinner. Not the documents. Her. She was already there when I arrived. Sitting beside them. Not across. Not neutral. With them. For a second, nothing made sense. Then everything did. She stood up when she saw me. Too fast. Too rehearsed. "Dad," she said. Not warm. Not natural. Positioned. Like a line she had practiced. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. At where she chose to sit. At who she chose to sit with. That told me everything. "Sit," one of them said. Calm. Confident. Like they already owned the moment. I sat. Slowly. My daughter didn't meet my eyes. That was the first reel. Not the setup. Not the pressure. That. Because she knew. Not everything. But enough. Enough to choose a side. They started talking. Not to me. Around me. Explaining the situation. The history. The damage. The fair resolution. All clean words. Carefully chosen. Built to sound reasonable. She nodded while they spoke. Small movements. Subtle agreement. That was the second. Then one of them turned to her. "Tell him," he said. Like she was part of this. Like this was her role. She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she looked at me. Finally. "You should listen to them," she said quietly. "They're not wrong." There it was. The third. Clean. Direct. Irreversible. Not confusion. Not manipulation. Choice. She believed them. Or worse. She needed to. For this to work. For this to make sense in her head. I felt something shift. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Final. Because once someone says that, there's no going back to before. I leaned back in my chair. Looked at her. Really looked this time. Not as my daughter. As part of the room. You knew, I said. Not a question. She didn't answer. Didn't deny it. Her silence confirmed it. That was enough. The man across from me smiled slightly. Satisfied. He thought that was the breaking point. That I would react now. Emotionally. Defensively. That I would try to explain. To her. To them. He was wrong. Because what he didn't understand was that the moment she chose them, this stopped being personal for me. And became structural. They had used her. Or she had used them. It didn't matter anymore. The result was the same. They had placed her between us. As leverage. As pressure. As proof. And they expected me to fold. I didn't. I looked down at the table. At the papers. At the signatures already prepared. Then back at her. One question, I said. Calm. Controlled. Who told you the story? She swallowed. They did, she said. Of course. Not facts. Not records. A story. Given. Repeated. Believed. I nodded once. That confirmed the last piece. Not truth. Narrative. And she chose it. Over me. That was the point of no return. Because you can argue facts. You can prove records. But once someone builds a belief, they defend it. Even when it breaks everything else. I reached for the glass of water. Took a slow sip. Set it down. No rush. No reaction. Just clarity. They had brought the past into the room. They had turned it into a weapon. And they had used my own daughter to hold it. That was their move. Their strongest one. Their final leverage. And it told me something important. They needed it. Which meant without it, they had nothing. I looked at each of them again. Then back at her. And that's when I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to consider before. This wasn't just about winning. This was about ending it. Completely. Because after this, there was no version of this story where things went back to normal. I didn't react. That was the first move. No raised voice. No argument. I let the silence settle. Let them think they had control. They filled it quickly. More explanations. More pressure. Numbers repeated. Deadlines emphasized. They thought they were tightening the grip. They weren't. They were showing me everything. Who spoke first? Who watched? Who avoided eye contact? I mapped it. Quietly. Without writing a single note. Then I did something simple. I asked for time. Not much. Give me a moment, I said. Calm. Measured. They agreed too quickly. That told me something. They thought delay meant doubt. It didn't. It meant alignment. I stepped away from the table. Not far. Just enough. My phone was already in my hand. No hesitation. One message. Sent. No explanation. No details. Just a name. And one instruction. Release it. That was all it took. I put the phone away. Returned to the table. Same posture. Same expression. Nothing changed. On the surface. They kept talking. One of them leaned in again. You understand this is serious, he said. I do, I replied. And I did. Just not the way he meant. Across from me, my daughter was still quiet. Watching now. Trying to read me. She couldn't. Because there was nothing to read. That was intentional. Emotion gives people leverage. Silence takes it away. A minute passed. Then another. They didn't notice the shift. Not yet. Because what I had set in motion wasn't visible here. Not at this table. It was already moving somewhere else. Documents being opened. Accounts being reviewed. Access being restricted. Quietly. Without announcement. Without warning. I leaned forward slightly. Before we continue, I said, I have a few questions. That changed the dynamic. Just enough. They weren't expecting questions. They were expecting compliance. Go ahead, one of them said. Still confident. Still certain. I nodded. Who drafted this? I asked, tapping the folder. A legal team, he said. Internal? I asked. A pause. External. Good. That meant distance. That meant traceable. I asked another question. Who authorized the inquiry? Another pause. Shorter this time. They didn't answer directly. That told me enough. They had built something. But not completely. There were gaps. And gaps can be widened. I leaned back again. Let them think I was processing. Calculating. They were right. Just not in the way they believed. Because while they were focused on this moment, the real movement had already started. The call I made earlier. The records I pulled. The message I sent. All of it connected. All of it timed. They thought this was the beginning. It wasn't. It was the midpoint. They had spent weeks building pressure. Carefully. Patiently. What they didn't understand was that pressure works both ways. And once it shifts, it doesn't warn you. It just breaks. I looked at the folder again. Then at them. Then at her. No anger. No hesitation. Just clarity. They still believed I was inside their plan. Still believed I was reacting. They didn't see it. Not yet. But the structure they built was already starting to move. And they were still sitting in it. The first crack didn't happen at the table. It happened on his phone. A soft vibration. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. He glanced down. Just for a second. Then again. Longer this time. His expression shifted. Small. Controlled. But different. What is it? One of the others asked. Nothing, he said quickly. Too quickly. That was the first loss of control. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Because I knew what he was seeing. Access denied. Accounts flagged. Permissions restricted. Quiet changes. But absolute. He tried to recover. Straightened his posture. Cleared his throat. Let's stay focused, he said. But his eyes kept drifting. Back to the phone. Back to the screen. Another vibration. This time, one of the others checked theirs. Then the third. The room shifted. Subtly. Like air pressure dropping. What's going on? The second one asked. No answer. Because now they all saw it. Notifications stacking. Emails marked urgent. Systems locking them out. One of them stood up slightly. Sat back down. Tried to stay composed. Failed. I picked up my glass. Took a slow sip. Set it down. No rush. No reaction. Across from me, my daughter noticed it too. Her eyes moved between them. Then to me. Something in her expression changed. Doubt. Finally. One of them turned to me. "What did you do?" he asked. Not calm anymore. I didn't answer. I let the silence do it. Because silence, at the right moment, is louder than anything you can say. His phone rang. He answered immediately. Didn't excuse himself. Didn't step away. That told me everything. "Say that again," he said into the phone. "Listening now." Really listening. His face lost color. "No, that's not possible," he said. It was. He looked at me. Now he understood. Not everything. But enough. "You can't do this," he said. Wrong. I already had. The second one stood up. "Sit down," I said quietly. He froze. Not because of the words. Because of the tone. There was no anger in it. No threat. Just certainty. And certainty is hard to argue with. He sat. Slowly. Across the table, my daughter whispered. "What's happening?" No one answered her. Because they didn't know how to explain it. Not yet. Another phone call. Another message. More confirmations. Their structure wasn't holding. It was collapsing. Quietly. Internally. Exactly the way they built it. That's the thing about systems. If you understand them well enough, you don't have to attack them. You just remove one piece. And let everything else fall. He leaned forward again. But now it wasn't confidence. It was urgency. "You think this changes anything?" he said. I looked at him. Finally. It was time. "You walked into this with fragments," I said calmly. "Incomplete records. Half a story." He opened his mouth. I didn't let him speak. I walked in with everything. That landed. Hard. Because now they understood the difference. They had pressure. I had control. And control doesn't argue. It acts. The room was different now. No smiles. No certainty. Just tension. And the slow realization that the direction had changed. Completely. I leaned back. Let them sit in it. Let them feel it. Because this wasn't the end. Not yet. This was just the moment they understood. They were no longer in charge. No one spoke after that. They didn't need to. Everything they had built was already gone. Quietly. Completely. The man across from me looked down at the folder. Didn't touch it. He understood now. It wasn't leverage. It was paper. "I think we're done here," I said. No emotion. Just a conclusion. No one argued. They couldn't. Because there was nothing left to defend. One by one, they stood. Not together. Not coordinated. Each of them leaving in their own silence. My daughter stayed. For a moment. Then she looked at me. Like she wanted to say something. Explain it. Fix it. I didn't stop her. I didn't help her either. Some things don't get repaired in a conversation. She nodded once. Then left. I stayed where I was. Finished my water. Looked around the room. Same table. Same chairs. Different outcome. Because the truth is simple. Power isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It waits. And when it moves, it doesn't leave room for doubt. I stood up. Adjusted my jacket. Walked out without looking back. Because once something is settled, There's no reason to revisit it. Thank you for listening. Calm justice doesn't shout. It keeps records.